This Maamaer we're going to learn now is a Maamaer that the Rebbe gave out for Yud Aleph Nisan. And just something which we've already spoken in previous times is that the way it worked by the Rebbe's Maamarim, the Rebbe said a Maamaer usually by Farbrengens Shabbos Mevorchim or Yom Pagrav, a special holiday or a Yom Tov, etc. In later years, the Rebbe began a custom of editing Maamarim, something that the previous Rebbe had done as well in his later years. And that was the idea of taking a Maamaer, which had been said previously a few years or many years previously, and editing the Maamaer, setting it up so it can be printed and studied in that way, published, because there's always a difference between something that's said and something that's published, something that's written Torah. So from these Maamarim, mostly the Rebbe began editing the old Maamarim, mostly from Tafshin Mem Zayin 1987, and later 1988, Tafshin Mem Ches even more, and even more in 1989, etc., until 1992, when the Rebbe would every Yom Tov and every special day edit a Maamaer. At that time, mostly the Rebbe wasn't saying as many Maamarim, and sometimes it was different types of Maamarim, but usually for a Yom Tov, the Rebbe edited a Maamaer, gave out a Maamaer. Now this particular Maamaer that we're going to learn is the first Maamaer that the Rebbe edited and gave out for Yud Aleph Nisan. We know that Yud Aleph Nisan, the Rebbe would farbreng, but the farbreng in Yud Aleph Nisan didn't start right away the first year. In fact, the first few years it didn't happen. The Rebbe showed something about Yud Aleph Nisan already from as far back as Tafshin Gimel, 1943, when the Rebbe wrote the Yom Yom, which means still during the lifetime of the previous Rebbe. The Yom Yom for Yud Aleph Nisan, for the 11th day of Nisan, speaks about a birthday and what a person is supposed to do on a birthday, that a person should be mizbeided, he should go in his rooms and he should think about all the things that happened in the previous year and prepare himself for the coming year. That was the first hint already from the Rebbe about the idea of Yud Aleph Nisan. Also, the first year already of the Rebbe's leadership, the Rebbe began the custom of giving out Michtavim Klolim, general letters. It started first with general letters for Pesach, which were letters that were meant for the entire Jewish people, for every single Jew, which means it's a personal letter to every single Jew that the Rebbe would give out. And it started, the first ones of these were Pesach letters, and the date, the first few years, was usually Yud Aleph Nisan, as well as throughout the years. Very often the Pesach letter, or one of the Pesach letters, was the date of Yud Aleph Nisan. One more interesting thing that happened already the first year of the Rebbe's Nesius, Tafshin Yud Aleph, 1951, which means this is 2 months after Yud Shvat, after the Rebbe officially accepted the leadership. On Yud Aleph Nisan, the Rebbe came into the shul in 770. And the Rebbe said, I'm going to go to the Oyel now. And before I go to the Oyel, all those who want to sign a paper and a letter that they're accepting to listen and to follow what they're going to be told, then I'm going to bring that to the Oyel. And the Rebbe said, I'm not going to ask you for things which are impossible. I'm not going to ask you to go up to the sky. But nevertheless, it's not a game, it's a serious matter. And if you accept to follow and to listen, then you must listen. So in a certain sense, Yud Aleph Nisan, 2 months after Yud Shvat, was in a certain sense a time of acceptance of the Rebbe's leadership. Once again, by Chassidim, many Chassidim then wrote that letter that they're going to listen and they're going to do what they're told. Later, the Rebbe didn't farbreng Yud Aleph Nisan. The Rebbe started the farbrenges of Yud Aleph Nisan from 19 71, Tafshin Lamed Aleph, which was Shnas HaShivim, 70 years, the Rebbe's 70th birthday. And at that time, the Rebbe began the Farbrengens of Yud Aleph Nisan. It was also at that time, it was after the passing of the old Rebbetzin, the Rebbetzin of the Frierdiker Rebbe, which until then the Rebbe used to go to the Frierdiker Rebbe's apartment to eat the Yom Tov meals, and from then the Rebbe would go home. So when the Rebbe still ate in 770 in the Frierdiker Rebbe's apartment, after the Seder, on Pesach, after the Seder, the Rebbe would come down to Farbreng. Later, when the Rebbe went home, so there was no Farbrengen after the Seder, and that time, whether that's connected or not connected, but it was also that year that the Rebbe began with the Farbrengens Yud Aleph Nisan. So it was also the Rebbe's 70th year. That means not 70th birthday, but the Rebbe's 70th year. And that Farbrengen, the Rebbe said a Maamaer and a Farbrengen, etc. Now this is 10 years, 11 years later that the Rebbe said this Maamaer, which is Yud Aleph Nisan Tafshin Mem Beis, 1982, which means the Rebbe's 80th birthday. And this Maamaer was said by that Farbrengen. It's right before Pesach. It's a Pesach Maamaer, but also a Maamaer which explains very strongly the connection of Pesach to the coming of Mashiach. The Rebbe then edited this Maamaer and gave it out 5 years later for Yud Aleph Nisan Tafshin Mem Zayin 1987, and like we said, this is the first Maamaer that the Rebbe edited, not the first Maamaer the Rebbe said, but the first Maamaer that the Rebbe edited and gave out in honor of Yud Aleph Nisan to be learned on Yud Aleph Nisan. So obviously this gives also a special connection to the idea of what it's all about, the special day of Yud Aleph Nisan. As we know also an interesting thing, that it's brought from the writings of the Frierdiker Rebbe, that a few days before Pesach, in the year Tafresh Samach Beis, which means the year of the Rebbe's birth, the Frierdiker Rebbe says there was a very big Gzeira, terrible decree against the Jewish people, and a few days before Pesach, it was nisbatel, it was nullified in a miraculous, wondrous way. The idea and the concept of Yud Aleph Nisan is always a connection between the Pesach, which is the first redemption, and the idea of Yud Aleph Nisan, which is the final redemption, the preparation of the final redemption, the coming of Mashiach, the revelation of Mashiach. This Maamaer that the Rebbe says is based, like many Maamarim in Chassidus, many Maamarim of the Rabbeim. It's based on a pasuk in Micha, a pasuk from the prophet Micha, that the prophet, the Navi says, Kimei Tzeischa mi'aretz Mitzrayim arenu niflois. Just as in the days that you left Egypt, so also in the future, in the time of Mashiach, I will show you wonders. And there's many Maamarim starting from the Alter Rebbe and throughout all the Rabbeim that discuss and explain and expound upon this pasuk. And the Rebbe begins with explaining various questions that there are in this pasuk. There's various different questions that are brought in the Maamarim, such as, why does it say Arenu, I will show him? Who's him? It should be Areim, I will show them. But one of the powerful questions is the whole concept. And this is what the Rebbe brings here, a question of the Zohar. It is a known question that the Zohar asks, which is quoted in many of the Maamarim of the discourses of the Rabbeim. And the question is, why do we say, as in the days that you left Egypt, I will show you wonders? The Jewish people leaving Egypt was only one day. When we have the mitzvah of remembering the exodus from Egypt, the Torah tells us, remember this day in which you left Egypt, meaning it's one day. So that you should remember the day that you left Egypt. Why then does it say Kimei, like the days, in plural? In other words, the whole idea leaving Egypt was one single thing that happened in one single day. In fact, part of the greatness of the exodus from Egypt is the fact that it was b'chipazon, it was in great haste, and it was a sudden thing that happened, that all the Jewish people in one single day managed to gather together from all over the land of Goshen and perhaps other places in Mitzrayim as well, and they all got together to come to Ramses, the last city in Mitzrayim, on that single day, and they traveled to Sukkot, they traveled out of Mitzrayim. So it was a one-day thing. And that's what the Torah also describes when it tells us about remembering our exodus from Egypt. Because the going out of Mitzrayim is not just something which we remember as something of the past, but it's something which is a basis and a foundation in Yiddishkeit, in the entire Jewish faith, is the fact that we remember that we left Mitzrayim, and as it says in Chassidus, in Tanya, and in many other places in Chassidus, that the concept and the meaning of it is not just remembering leaving the physical Mitzrayim, the physical land of Egypt, but that there's a constant thing, and this is the basis of what a Jew has to do, is constantly leave his Mitzrayim, his limitations and his confinement of the things that hold him back from being able to allow his soul to free itself from the imprisonment of his animal soul, to be able to connect to Hashem and do what Hashem wants. That's the basis of what a Jew's avodah, of what a Jew's mission in this world. However, the Torah, throughout, whenever it talks about leaving Mitzrayim, it talks about Yom, one single day that it happened. And the reason for this is because not only was it one single day back then, but also the avodah of a Jew of leaving Egypt is something that a person can do in one moment. It's something which takes one moment, one turn, one decision. And that's the emphasis. It's not something which takes a long time to do. True, once a person did it, it takes a lifetime to implement it and to bring it into his life. It's a lifetime of living it. But the concept of leaving Mitzrayim, the idea of leaving one's confinement that holds them back and doesn't enable them to do what they're supposed to do and to connect to Hashem, is something which takes shaita chada, and as it says in the Zohar, that tshuva is something that happens b'shaita chada u'v'riga chada, one moment. And Chassidus explains that the word shaita means not only one moment, but one turn. It takes one resolve, one decision, one point in a person's life that he makes the resolution, I'm going to leave these confines. Sure, it takes a lifetime of fulfilling it, but it's a one moment thing. And that's why the Torah always emphasizes it's the day that you left Egypt. It's one day, it's a one moment thing. That a person shouldn't think it's something which is more than that. It's the resolve which that takes, that one day, one point, one turn in a person's divine service. Here, when the Pasuk, when the Navi is comparing the exodus from Egypt to the redemption of the future, to the coming of Mashiach, it talks about plural, it talks about Yimei, the days, which implies that there's more than just one point of leaving. It's not just one point of exodus. It's not just one point of leaving one's confines. It's something which takes a whole series of events and a series of actions on the person's part. And the question is, that seems to contradict not only what the Torah always says, but what the whole concept of leaving Mitzrayim is. So that's the question of the Zohar. There's another question which is brought down in the Maamarim of the Rabbeim, a question on the whole concept that it says in the Pasuk. V'gam tzorich lav, and another thing that has to be understood. B'toichen ha'kasav Kimei Tzeischa mi'eretz Mitzrayim haren niflois. The whole meaning, the whole point of what the Pasuk is saying, that just as in the days that you left Egypt, I'll show you wonders. The Pirush HaPashut, the simple meaning of it, this is Sha'agula asida lave b'mheirav yameinu mamesh al yidei Mashiach tzidkenu. The future redemption, which is going to come very speedily, Tia ba'ofen shal harenu niflois Kimei shehoisa agula d'yitzias Mitzrayim, will be in a way that Hashem will show us wonders in a similar fashion to the wonders that happened when we left Egypt. We all know that the leaving of Egypt was the most wondrous occurrence in history. when Hashem first prepared by smiting the Egyptians with the 10 plagues, and then the actual exodus, the actual fact that the Jewish people, some 3 million people strong, left Egypt in one single day, and then the continuation of Kriyas Yamsuf, which is the biggest wonder that's always mentioned in the words of our sages as the greatest wonder in history, the splitting of the Red Sea. Splitting of water going against the very nature of what the nature of water, which is to go down, and here it stood up like a wall. And so the Navi, the prophet, is telling us, you know, and you learned about all the great wonders that took place when you left Egypt. You should know that these aren't just a one-time thing. When Mashiach comes, there'll be similar types of wonders. However, Chassidus has a question on this. They move and it's not understood. It's explained in many psukim, in many promises of the prophets, in Yirmiyah, in Yeshaya, etc., and in many places that the sages explain things, in the Gemara, in Brachas, in Sanhedrin, in Saita, in the various places that were told, and it's explained at length, that only the future redemption will be a complete redemption that isn't followed by any galus. Whereas the redemption of the Exodus from Egypt was one that was followed by a galus. And as Tzeischa says in Psachim, that's why we call the redemption from Egypt is called Shira Chadasha, the song that we give praise to Hashem for it, is called in the feminine Shira, whereas the song that we are going to say in connection to the redemption of Mashiach is called Ashir Chadash in the masculine. Because feminine is something that shows and that represents a incomplete redemption, one that's still followed by another galus, by another exile. And one of the reasons for this is because with regards to a woman's having a child, so she first has one child, it's followed again by another child, which means that it's not something that's final. Whereas when it says it in the masculine, it's something which shows on the finality of it, and that's why we call it a shir chadash, something that that's complete, and that there's no galus that follows, that comes after it. Which means that it's not just a difference in facts that the redemption from Mitzrayim was one that was followed by an exile after it, and the redemption in the time of Mashiach will be one that won't be followed by an exile. It's something which is so much stronger and more powerful than that. The actual redemption, the very fact that it's followed by exile, the very fact that later it's possible to again have exile, not just that, but there actually was another one and another one, etc., that shows that its essence is not complete. A complete redemption means when a person is fully redeemed and he's not able to go into exile again. So the difference isn't just in one aspect, but the difference is in the whole concept of redemption. This one is an incomplete one, and the redemption in the time of Mashiach will be a complete redemption. Which means that the future redemption will be incomparably greater than the redemption of coming out of Mitzrayim. Which is why in the Gemara and Brachas there's two opinions, and according to one opinion, we won't mention anymore about the fact that we left Mitzrayim once Mashiach comes, because it won't be important. As the Gemara says, Shraga b'tia ramaya hani. What's the point of a candle when it's already daylight? We always mention when we're in Galus, we mention that we left Mitzrayim, but that's like a candlelight, which a candlelight can be extinguished. But once you get to the daylight, you get to the full light of a day that can never get extinguished. Why mention the candle? Why mention Yetzias Mitzrayim? And the Rebbe continues, "V'gam la'adeyo shemazkirin Yetzias Mitzrayim li'moisa Mashiach." Even the opinion in the Gemara that we will mention and we will still remember about the fact that we left Egypt once Mashiach comes. Tzarich al zeh limud miyuchad. The only reason we know this is because we have a special teaching that we learn it from a pasuk. And if it wouldn't be for that, then this opinion would also agree that we won't mention it. Because according to the logic, you wouldn't mention it because it's so insignificant, it pales in significance to the coming of Mashiach. If that's the case, why do we say that as in the days when you left Egypt, I'll show you wonders, which means that we're saying, what's the greatness of the future redemption? Is in the fact that then there will also be wonders that will be shown just like coming out of Mitzrayim. It's like a person is going to say, you want to tell someone, I'm going to take you to a great place. We'll go out to eat in a delicious restaurant. And this restaurant is so amazing, it's similar to that eat-out place that we ate in the other day. Where's the comparison? And this is totally incomparable. You're trying to talk about the greatness of the coming of Mashiach, and you say it will be similar to Yetzias Mitzrayim, which pales in its insignificance to it. What's the point of comparing it to something which is so much less? Why would we want to compare it and in that way put the comparison? Moreover, from the fact that the pasuk does say, as in the days when you left Egypt, I'll show you wonders. Mashma, from this it implies, Shaniflois shahayu b'mei Tzeischa mi'aretz Mitzrayim, hey ma'aschala v'ashoyresh gam al niflois shibigul asida. The wonders that will take place the wonders that took place when we left Egypt, they are the beginning, they are the source, they are the root for the wonders of the coming of Mashiach. Which means not only are we comparing the two, and seemingly they're totally incomparable because Yetzias Mitzrayim is insignificant compared to the coming of Mashiach. More than that, the comparison is in a manner that it seems that actually the coming of Mashiach is going to be the wonders that will take place in the coming of Mashiach all come from. They're all an extension of the wonders of when we left Egypt. Now the fact that they're an extension of them and these are the root, this is the source, implies that these have a certain greatness over the other ones. There's a story that's told by the Rabbeim that the Tzemach Tzedek was once saying a Maamaer, and in the Maamaer, the Tzemach Tzedek was explaining the greatness of Moshe Rabbeinu over Mashiach. Now, when a Rebbe says a Maamaer, he's saying Ruach Havaya Diber Bo Umilase Al Ishainam, that he's saying it's the Spirit of Hashem that's speaking through him. He's saying something which is coming from above. So the Tzemach Tzedek was saying the Maamaer, and then he felt bad. How can he be talking about the greatness of Moshe Rabbeinu over Mashiach? And the Tzemach Tzedek fell asleep, and in his dream, he was told that the difference between Moshe Rabbeinu and Mashiach is that Moshe Rabbeinu is like a good doctor who lacks the experience. Mashiach is the good doctor who also has the experience. But nevertheless, it's all based on the original idea of Moshe Rabbeinu. And a similar concept over here, we're talking about the fact that when Mashiach comes, it will still need to come, even though it's going to be infinitely greater, it's going to need to have that basis of the redemption from Mitzrayim. And the question is why? So the Rebbe continues to explain. The point that's explained in the Maamarim of the Rabbeim is Shebepasuk Zeh Kimei Tzeischa mi'aretz Mitzrayim arenu niflois yeshnei pirushim. In this pasuk that says, just as the days when you left Egypt, I'll show you wonders, there's two ways of explaining it. Pirush Aleph, the one explanation is Shegulo Asido Tiye Ke Hagulo D'Yitzias Mitzrayim. The future redemption will be similar to the redemption of when we left Egypt. Shegam Oz Yeran Uflois K'mo Yishaya Bigul D'Yitzias Mitzrayim. That's the simple meaning that also then in the time of Mashiach there will be miracles and wonders which are similar to the ones that happened when we left Egypt. Pirush Beis, the second explanation is Shaniflois Sheyu Bigula Asida Yiyu Niflois Gam Be'erech Aniflois Shoiv Tzeischa Me'eretz Mitzrayim. The wonders that will take place in the future redemption will be wonders also in comparison to the wonders that happened when we left Mitzrayim. What does the word wonder mean? Wonder means something that doesn't sit in a person's mind. It totally boggles the mind. Which means it's totally beyond the natural. Now when we say that the Kimei Tzeischa Me'eretz Mitzrayim Arenu Niflois, according to the second explanation, the meaning of these words is that the wonders that will take place in the coming of Mashiach will be wonders even in comparison to the wonders that took place when we left Mitzrayim. Which means when we left Mitzrayim, there was the nature of the world, that water is water and blood is blood. There was the nature of the world that 3 million people can't gather together, with women and children and little babies can't all come from all over the country in one single day. There's the natural events that water goes and flows in a manner that the ocean just flows and doesn't stand up like a wall. There's the wonder which makes no sense in nature, which goes beyond nature, that the water can turn to blood, that the 3 million people can all get together in that one day, and that the sea can be split and stand up like a wall on either side of the Jewish people as they cross. When it comes to the coming of Mashiach, the wonders that will take place in the coming of Mashiach, it will be as if the splitting of the sea is natural compared to the greater wonder that's going to take place in the coming of Mashiach. This is totally beyond something that makes any sense. And the Rebbe continues, V'hainu, and this means the following. Da'agam, that means both explanations are true. Da'agam shebichlalos haniflois degula asida in doimes laniflois degulas Mitzrayim. Kipirosh hapashut, despite the fact that in general the wonders of the future redemption, of the coming of Mashiach, are similar to the wonders of Yetzias Mitzrayim, and as we see in the Psukim, that just as then the sea was split, so also when Mashiach comes the river will split, etc., etc., the wonders will be those that will be in a similar manner as those that happened in the time of Yetzias Mitzrayim. Nevertheless, despite their comparison, there'll still nevertheless be an advantage in the wonders that will take place in the future. To the extent that they will be wonders even in comparison to the wonders of when we left Egypt. Which means the following. When we talk about the Gula Asida, it's not just we're discussing what type of wonders will take place. We're talking about two concepts. There's the concept, and as we mentioned earlier from the story with the Tzemach Tzedek, there's Moshe Rabbeinu, there's Mashiach. Moshe Rabbeinu brought the Torah to the Jewish people, and there never will be again a giving of a Torah. The Torah is the basis of everything and will always be the basis of everything, and nothing in the Torah can ever change, even in the time of Mashiach. And yet, there's Mashiach who reveals, who teaches the secrets of the Torah in a manner that he reveals the inner dimension and the inner essence of the Torah in a way which is wondrous, which is totally beyond and totally in a way that's completely higher than what was revealed by Moshe Rabbeinu. And similar to that in the general concepts of redemption. There's the redemption of Yetzias Mitzrayim, That was the basis. That was the basis of our freedom. That's what enabled the Jew to leave the confines of the world, to be able to become Hashem's servants with the giving of the Torah. Then there is the wonders of the coming of Mashiach, which bring the ultimate freedom. Which, while the redemption from Yetzias Mitzrayim didn't change us in ultimate, because we were still able to go back into Galus. But it set the way, it began and it set the stage for future redemptions. The redemption in the time of Mashiach, that's what completes the whole concept of redemption. It makes us free men, free in all meanings, in all ways, in a manner that it's impossible to go back into Galus. So it's totally incomparably greater, but yet it's based on the same basis. Now the Rebbe explains it to biur mailas haniflois the lasid love al haniflois yitzias Mitzrayim b'lashon HaKabbalah, to explain the greatness of the wonders of the coming of Mashiach over the wonders of the Exodus from Egypt in the words of Kabbalah. Now, although the Rebbe is using here words of Kabbalah, but the Rebbe is translating it the way it is in Chassidus, which means it's not just the words and the concepts of Kabbalah, but the concepts, the way they're practical in every person's divine service and the way a person serves Hashem. But often, as we know that the Shla tells us that the Torah is midaberes ba'alyenim v'reimezes b'tachtonim. The Torah is Hashem's Torah. The Torah speaks in the higher worlds. It hints. It gives us a hint, and it gives us an ability to have the concept in the lower worlds. And similar to the idea of when you have something amazing that takes place in the higher worlds, it's like if a person will look at an airplane that's flying in the sky, but down here on the ground we can see the small shadow of the airplane. The shadow is tiny, but you can see the shadow moving, which tells you and shows you that this is actually a reflection of the fact that the airplane itself, which is incomparably bigger than the shadow, is also moving. The shadow is moving a lot slower than the way the airplane itself is actually moving. This is the idea of when there's something that's being shown to us down here, which enables us to grasp what's going on up there, even though there it's incomparably greater, but that's the source. So sometimes in order to understand what's really happening, we have to look at the depth, at the source of it, the way it's in Kabbalah. Like the famous story that the Rebbe tells of how one time the Rebbe Rashab was sitting by a meal, and after he washed his hands for bread and he made a maitzi, he didn't want to interrupt in the middle. And one of the people in the family mentioned that the doctors, the professors just discovered something amazing. The professors discovered that in a person's brain there's one artery that's filled with steam, and it turns to either side of the brain. It either turns to the back of the brain or to the front of the brain. When a person wants to remember something, he needs it to go to the back of the brain, which helps for memory, and that's why he puts his head up. When a person wants to think things deeply, he needs to go to the front of the brain, which helps for depth of understanding, and that's why he puts his head downwards. The Rebbe Rashab didn't say anything at the time, but after benching, he went into his room and he took out a book with the handwriting of the Mittler Rebbe, where the Mittler Rebbe writes in a few lines this concept the way it is in Chassidus, where the Mittler Rebbe explains that in the brain there's two moichin, there's two intellectual faculties that a person has. One is the moyach ha-chachma, the brain of chachma, which chachma is wisdom, which that's what helps for zikaron, for remembering. And there's the moyach ha-bina, the brain of understanding, which that's what helps for depth. And the Mittler Rebbe then explains that that's why, and he goes on in a few lines to explain about this artery and why a person puts his head down when he wants to understand and puts his head back when he wants to remember something. So the family member said to the Rebbe Rashab, if so, then the Mittler Rebbe was a great professor, a great doctor. a medical professor. And the Rebbe Rashab said, no, the Mittler Rebbe knew it because that's the way it is above in the spiritual worlds. Whatever happens in the spiritual worlds is reflected down here. But it's not that the Mittler Rebbe, because we don't understand things in the spiritual manner, we have to see things down here and understand that there's a source in the spiritual worlds. But sometimes when we go to this source, we can understand things in their full depth. And similarly over here, we know about a redemption. We were in Egypt, we got out of Egypt. We're going to get out of this galus, and we're going to have a complete redemption. But sometimes to understand it in a deeper manner, as well as especially the way Chassidus explains it, understanding it in a person's divine service comes by understanding the way it is in the spiritual sense. So the Rebbe explains how is it in Kabbalah. Hine Yadua, it's known. Shebiyitzias Mitzrayim hutzrach leitzias Yisrael mimem tes shorim delum hazeh. At the Exodus from Egypt, the Jews had to be taken out of the 49 gates of Lu'um hazeh, of the other side. Zeu mashemiyad la'achrei Yetziah miMitzrayim. Maschil im Yemei Svira Soimer Shebechol Yemimei Svira Yetzi Mishar Echad Lu'um hazeh. This is the reason why immediately after we leave Egypt. And in fact, according to the Medrash, even though the mitzvah of counting Svira only started after the Torah was given, the Jewish people weren't commanded to count the Omer the first year after they left Egypt. But according to the Medrash, they began counting on their own because they wanted to prepare themselves in anticipation for the giving of the Torah. So immediately after leaving Egypt, and similarly every year immediately after Pesach, we began to count the Omer. Every day of the days of counting the Omer, we leave another gate of Lu'um hazeh of the other side. The idea of leaving the gates of the other side, that comes through drawing down the 50 gates of understanding. This is the reason why in the Torah the Exodus from Egypt, Yetzias Mitzrayim, is mentioned 50 times, which corresponds to the 50 gates of understanding. Let's try and understand this, what this means, these words which are seemingly Kabbalistic words. Let's understand a little bit the idea of it. Why do we call it gates? What are gates? Let's look at a gate. You have a city. The city is the place. The city has many gates in which we can enter the city. Generally, each gate has its own way of entering the city. Each gate serves one specific purpose in the manner of entering the city. And even more than that, when entering the city, there's not just one gate or a few gates in the walls of the city, but many times there's a few gates one after the other, that by going in from one gate we can now get closer to the next gate, etc. So you have the city itself, there's the thing itself, there's the gates that open up, that enable one to enter, to be able to come into the city. In a similar way, in the way Hashem created the world, the Pasuk says, Zeh le'uma zeh aso elikim. Hashem created this opposite of that. What's this and that? Zeh, this is Kedusha. The reality and the only reality in the world is Kedusha, godliness. Hashem is the only reality that exists. But Hashem enabled what we call le'uma zeh, the other side. The side which opposes to holiness, which isn't a real existence. And as it says in Chassidus, that it's kekoif bifnei adam. It's like a monkey that copies the actions and the movements of a person. Just as we see a monkey, that there's a person doing something and the monkey repeats and does whatever the person did. Now the person is really doing it. The monkey is just pretending, but when you look, it looks like the same movements, the same action. That's called klipa lumazeh because it doesn't have a real existence. So it just mimics what happens in holiness in the reality. What's the point of lumazeh? That Hashem enables there to be what we call klipa, the shell that covers over the truth of holiness, which is the godly light in the world. Now let's think about the idea of the essence, similar to what we call the city itself, the place that we're entering, and the gates that enable us to go to it. The essence is godliness, is Hashem Himself. The essence is something that's above understanding, above comprehension, above being able to put it into any category. It's the essence of Hashem. However, the essence of Hashem also has gates. The gates are the manners in which this godliness is expressed in the world. That's why they're called gates. Gates that enable us to approach and to reach this essence, which is Hashem Himself. Just as there is the essence and the gates in Kedusha, there is also in Lu'umazeh and the cover that covers up over the truth of Hashem, and that Hashem allows it to be like a monkey which mimics the same thing that there is in Kedusha, that there's also the essence of the klipa, the actual cover that covers over the truth and leads a person to think, God forbid, that this is the true existence. And there's all the 49 gates, which is the way that it's revealed, the way that it's expressed in the world. What are the 49 gates in Kedusha, which have also in the opposite in Lumazeh 49 gates? The way Hashem created the world is that there are 7 midas, 7 godly channels of light that channel godliness, that channel the recognition of godliness into the world. These 7 are called the 7 holy attributes. Each one of them is another approach, another manner, and another way in which godliness is channeled into the world, whether it's through chesed, which is kindness, which means when it's drawn down, through gvura, through tzimtzum, which is when there's the godly light is held back, and there's the contraction of the light. Tiferes, mercy, etc., etc. Each one is another channel of the way godliness is expressed in the world for people. Each one of these is made up of 7 because each one has in it all 7 aspects, which is altogether, that's the 49 gates, meaning the 49 expressions. But the essence is what we call the Shara Nun. The 50th gate is the gate that approaches, it's not anymore a channel, it's the gate that reaches the very essence of what it's all about. In Klippa, in Lu'umazeh, and the other side, there's also the same thing. But what is it in the other side? It's not a true existence. It doesn't exist. Zeh, this, the true existence is godliness. Li'umazeh, the opposite. The concealment of zeh. Not a real existence, but the monkey that mimics. That's Klippa. The essence of Klippa means the essence of the cover-up of the imagination that there's something else other than Hashem. And the way it's expressed in each one of these 7 manners, in the unholy attributes. 7 times 7 is 49, but there's the 50th gate, which is the very essence that approaches the essence of the concept of Klippa itself. It's not merely an expression of Klippa, it's the actual Klippa itself. Let's start from what happened in Mitzrayim. When the Jewish people were in Mitzrayim, they weren't just in a physical place called Egypt. They were in the confines, in the limitations of the physical world that confines and that limits and that conceals and hides over the truth of Hashem. And the Jews at that time were totally sunk into it, which expressed itself physically by the fact that the Jews followed all the customs and all the ways, behavioral manners of Egypt, which is the most corrupt of places. And the Jewish people followed their surroundings in this corruption, which is the expression of not recognizing the truth of Hashem. To the extent that when the Jewish people left Egypt, it says, Halalu evdei avodah zara, v'halalu evdei avodah zara. The angel said to Hashem, just as the Egyptians are idol worshippers or idolatrous, so also the Jewish people have become idolatrous. They began to behave and compare themselves and be similar to the Egyptians. But there were three things that remained. Three things in which the Jewish people were called, as we say in the Haggadah Shel Pesach, Mitzuyanim Sham. They were in a manner that they were special. They were different. They were established in a different manner in three essential things. Three things that express the essence of a person. They didn't change their language. A language is the way a person talks, the way a person expresses themselves, the way a person thinks. Their language remained the Jewish language. True, they spoke about the things that the Egyptians spoke about. They behaved as the Egyptians behaved, but their language remained the Jewish language. Their names. A name expresses the essence of the person. Who is he? What's he all about? That essence remained the Jewish name. And their dress, the way they dressed, which is the closest thing that expresses a person, that remained Jewish. And that's why they were able to get out of Egypt. And that's what we say, that at that time that the Jews were in Egypt, in the 49 gates, they were sunk into the impurities of Egypt. In expressions, in manners of approach, they were mimicking. They were in the similar, Rahman al-Islam, to the Egyptians. But their essence, the 50th, which is the essence, that remained complete, and that's why they were still able to get out of Mitzrayim, because their essence was always complete. And yet, when they left, they had to go out of those 49 gates in order to reach the 50th day, Shavuos, when the essence of Hashem is given to us, the Torah, which is the 50th gate. But to get there, they had to purify their 49 different approaches, the 49 different channels. How does one change the impurity for purity? When a person realizes that impurity is not a real existence, impurity is a concealment, it's a cover. By drawing down the 49 gates of holiness, which these are called the 49 gates of Bina, of understanding. Because how does a person appreciate godliness? Through understanding godliness. This expresses itself in his different attributes and his different faculties and the different emotional, etc. attributes. But what does it stem from? Where does a person appreciate godliness? Through Bina, through understanding. These 49 gates of understanding, that's what transforms the person from the 49 gates of impurity. And it's the same manner when we talk about a person in the world. A person who's not behaving the way they should. A person who doesn't appreciate godliness. He can't chase away the immorality. He has to bring and understand and learn Chassidus and learn about Hashem and understand the reality of the godliness, which that the channel and the way in is through understanding. And in that manner, he transforms these 49 gates. And that's why Yetzias Mitzrayim is mentioned in the Torah 50 times. Because leaving Egypt, living the limitations of the world, there are 50 manners in which we do it. The limitations, we've been in there 49, but that affects the 50th. The 50th wasn't pulled in, but it's being affected. And that's why 50 times we're leaving Egypt, each time going out of another gate of the other side. Now that we understand this, the Rebbe continues to explain. In the 50 gates of understanding, there's various levels. One is Nun Shari Bina Kamoish Nimshachim B'Malchus. The 50 gates of understanding, the way they come down into Malchus. Vihu, and that's in the words of Kabbalah, Mashemisitra, the Yuvla, Bina, Nimshachim, B'Malchus. From the side of Yovel, Yovel is freedom. Yovel is the 50th year. The 50th year, when one reaches the essence, it's the completion of everything. Meaning, and that's why Bina is called the side of Yovel, because Bina is the source of all the 49. Bina is what enables the freedom of all the 49 manners and attributes. And therefore, from Yovel, it comes down into Malchus. Into Malchus, which Malchus is kingship, meaning the godly light, the way it's in the world. Let's look at this in a practical sense, not just the words of Kabbalah. When a person learns a Maamaer Chassidus, as we said earlier, the Nun Shari Bina is learning about Hashem. When a person learns, but there's different manners that a person can learn. First way, the person is learning. He doesn't necessarily concentrate or understand or appreciate so much what he's understanding in his learning. He understands the ideas, but it's mostly the action, the practical, that it leads him to. So he understands the concepts, but he's not focusing so much on understanding. He's focusing more on what it leads him to. Ulemaila Yeser, there's a higher level, which is a Nun Shari Bina, Kimei Bimkaimam Bibina, the 50 gates of understanding, the way they are in understanding. Which would mean when a person studies something and it's not just the outcome. I learned all these things, but I'm learning, it's more the idea that comes out of it. That means it's the Shari Bina, it's understanding, but it's the way it comes into the Malchus, into the practical physical world. Then there's when a person learns Chassidus and he understands the depth of it and he's focusing on the understanding itself. He's focusing on the concepts, on the godly concepts that he's understanding. This illuminates him. This opens up his mind to appreciate godliness, the Nun Shari Bina. The next level is Ulemaila Yeser. The even higher level is Kimei Shem Klulim B'Shar HaNun B'Vchinas Keser, the way all the 50 gates are included in the 50th one, which is the level of Keser. Keser Gufa B'Vchinas Atik, and in Keser itself is the level of Atik. What's the idea of Keser? Just like you have a crown that's on top of the head, so also in the understanding of godliness, there's the head, there's the intellect, there's the heart, the emotions. Then there's what's above the head, and that's the essence. In Keser itself, there are two levels. We won't go into them at length, perhaps at a different time, but just in short, the two levels are called Arich Anpin and Atik Yoimin. Arich Anpin, or as it's known often in Chassidus as Arich and Atik. Arich Anpin is what we call Chitzonius HaKeser, the outer level of Keser. What is the outer level? When you talk about an object, you talk about its outer essence and its inner essence. The inner essence is the way it relates to itself. The outer essence is the way it's able to relate to something else. If we would look at a crown, the outer essence of the crown is the part of it that's able to go on the person's head. It's above the head, it surrounds the head, but it connects to the head, it sits on the head. The inner essence is the beauty of the crown itself, which is not connected in any manner to the head. The crown jewel, the beauty of the crown, etc., which is totally above the head. Similarly in Keser, Keser is what's above intellect and emotions. The two levels of that are the Chitzonius HaKeser, the outer essence of it, which is in a person is the power of ratzon, of desire, of will. Person wants something not because he understands it, not because he feels it, he wants it. Nevertheless, when a person wants something, he can relate and affect, just like we say a person can only study in a place where his heart desires. The desire, the want, affects the intellect and emotions. Then there's the deeper idea, which is what we call Pnimius HaKeser, known as Atik. Atik Yoimin, meaning it's removed completely. It's the very essence, which that's in the person, the power of pleasure. Pleasure doesn't come from anything and doesn't affect it. It's something on its own. So here we have the 50th gate, which is Keser. The 50th gate, which is the essence. There's the 49 gates, which are the expressions of godliness. The 50th gate is the essence of godliness. That essence of godliness is Keser, and in Keser itself, it's Atik, the level which is removed from anything else, the very essence of godliness. And we have the 50 gates, the way they're included in the 50th, which means the way they're all included in the essence of godliness. In the idea of learning a Maamaer, that would be when a person learns the Maamaer, but he's not only learning and understanding the action that comes from it. He's not only learning and understanding the concepts themselves, but he's learning, but the learning leads him. When a person learns Chassidus, it leads him to an essence, an essential connection, which is above the understanding that he dealt with. These are the three manners that there's the 50 Shari Bina. So again, Yitzias Mitzrayim means leaving our limitations. How do we leave our limitations? Through the 50 gates of understanding, the 50 ways that it's expressed, the manner of us leaving our limitations. And this happens in three ways. Either the way it comes into Malchus, the way it expresses itself in practical, the way it's above understanding on its own, just the godly revelation, or the way the understanding is included in the very essence of the 50th gate. Now the Rebbe says, "V'zeu ma shegiluim l'lasid lava yuniflois gam berach haniflois yitzias Mitzrayim." Now we can understand how the revelation of the coming of Mashiach is going to be wonders, even in comparison to the wonders of when we left Egypt. The 50 gates of understanding, the way they were drawn down when we left Egypt, these are the gates of understanding of Bina. But even more than that, it's the way they come into Malchus. What was the idea of leaving Mitzrayim? It's the Nun Shari Bina. Mitzrayim is the klippa that covers over godliness. Mitzrayim is the immorality which comes from the fact that Paray, the king of Egypt, says, Li ye'oiri v'ani asisani, the river is mine and I created myself and I created the river. Paray, who says, I don't know Havaya, I don't know about godliness that's above the world. Mitzrayim, that covers over the belief in Hashem, that only worships belief in the power of human genius and the power of nature, and thus becomes the most immoral place because there's nothing above. Going out of Mitzrayim means bringing down the recognition and realization of godliness. But the way it was when they left Egypt, the beginning of the way, was more bringing down, yes, the levels of godliness. The very essence of Hashem was revealed when they left Mitzrayim, but it was revealed in a way that it comes down into Malchus. It was revealed in a way, the way it relates to the world. Revealing godliness in the world. Enabling the world in the natural manner to be able to appreciate godliness. It was all the way it comes down in Malchus, the way it comes in the practical. Mashenkin lasid loving, the coming of Mashiach, tiyam shachas anun shari bina kamoishem bekeser. When Mashiach comes, the very essence of Hashem will be revealed. It will bring down the very same nun shari bina, but the way they're in keser. Not only the way they're in keser, in the essence of godliness, but Allah should be keser gufa. In Keser itself, what will be drawn down is from the level of Atik, the level that's removed from the world. And in Atik itself, what will be revealed is the very inner essence of Atik. And like it says regarding Mashiach, it says, the prophet Yeshaya says about Mashiach, behold, my servant will understand. He will be uplifted and he will be elevated and he will be very high The very much which is the essence that refers to the pnimius of Atik. That's what's going to be revealed through Mashiach. Because Mashiach is coming not just like by Yetzias Mitzrayim, where it was taking us out of Egypt, enabling us to recognize that the world is really Hashem. When Mashiach comes, the very essence of Hashem will be revealed in the world. Like it says in Kabbalah, in the writings of the Arizal, of Reb Chaim Vital, the student of the Arizal, in the Sefer of Pri Eitz Chaim, that he says, Shekol am shachis achshav, heim rak mibchinas chitzenius atik. Anything that comes into the world now, any godly revelation only comes from the outer level of Atik. That means even though it comes from Atik, from the essence of Hashem, but it comes only from the outer level, which means one that can relate to the world. In the time of Mashiach, it will be the very essence of Hashem that will be revealed. The meaning, the purpose, the goal of everything will be revealed when Mashiach comes. When we went out of Mitzrayim, it was giving us the power to be able to recognize godliness. When Mashiach comes, it will be the goal, the purpose, the reality of what everything is. That's what's going to be revealed. Ella, however, she'af al pichin medama akasuv aniflois sheyiu bigula asidal aniflois shayu b'tzias Mitzrayim. Nevertheless, the pasuk still compares the wonders of the coming of Mashiach to the wonders that were in the time when we left Mitzrayim. Like the simple meaning of the pasuk that we mentioned earlier, that when Mashiach comes, there will be the revelation of the same wonders that will be in the time that were in the time of Yetzias Mitzrayim. Also, when they left Egypt, it was the highest revelation because it was the Nun Shari Bina. And like it's explained in the Hemshech called Terav, from the year 5672, from the Rebbe Rashab, that he said a very deep, famous Hemshech, and over there he explains, Bepirush Nigla Leim Melech Malchi Amlachem HaKadosh Baruch Hu V'chveidu V'atzma. We say in the Agada, revealed upon them, the King of all kings, the Holy One, blessed be He, b'chvaydayu v'atzmai, in His glory and in His very essence. Sheb'chvaydayu v'atzmai im darges achi nailos. In His glory and His very essence means the highest levels of godliness, not just the revelation, the very essence of godliness was revealed. Ela sheb'yitzias Mitzrayim haya gilu d'b'chinas zu al yidei slapshus b'b'chinas malchus. Upasach havayala Pesach. In the time of Yetzias Mitzrayim, it came through coming down into the level of Malchus, which is called the doorway into the world. Hashem jumped over through the doorway. The Pesach, Ubchinas HaMalchus, Pesach is the level of Malchus. However, in the time of Mashiach, it will be revealed without any type of garment. It says, when Mashiach comes, your teacher will no longer hide. Which means that in essence, what was revealed in the time of Yetzias Mitzrayim and what will be revealed in the time of Mashiach, it's the same thing. It's godliness. It's the essence of godliness. But in the time of Mitzrayim, it was still revealed into a world which still had to remain in a manner of concealment. So the essence of Hashem was revealed, but it was revealed in covers so that now we can deal with it in the world. But after all of our avodah that we do, we reach the very essence of Hashem, which isn't hidden anymore, that the very essence of Hashem will be revealed. So that means that it's the same thing, which is an amazing thing, like we'll learn in Mitzvah Hashem afterwards. It's an amazing concept that we're saying. When we left Mitzrayim, we actually got the revelation of the very essence of Hashem, the revelation of Mashiach. That was given to us and it's constantly there. It's something which we're constantly dealing with. However, at that time it was in Malchus, which means it's totally incomparable. Because Atik is removed from the world. Malchus is the godliness in the world. Atik compared to Malchus is Niflois, is something which is totally beyond, totally incomparable. But yet it is the same thing which we're using in order to reach the very essence of the Gula of Mashiach. And as we'll continue with Hashem in the next